All right, everybody. Welcome back to the post-game show to get you in the know. I am here with someone who normally joins us for college football, but part of the Cajun Sports Talk podcast and channel overall, or brand overall. So, if you want to introduce yourself and what you normally talk about, but we're here talking Saints today.
Yeah, we're here talking Saints today. Finally get their first win of the season.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we typically do immediate reaction. So obviously, the immediate reaction is the fact that Spencer Rattler gets his first win. Right? I feel like that has to be a weight lifted off of his shoulder, so to speak. I guess obviously it's not comparable to guys playing pro football, but whenever you go out there and everybody has their thing, right? First day on the job, first time they finally do something unsupervised, and just like us here behind the camera, that first time you hop on a podcast, you're like feeling the jitters, and then you look at a couple of viewers here and there, and then it grows. And I'm willing to bet Spencer's high is way bigger than our high will ever feel with that first win in the National Football League. So, and I
Definitely.
think the biggest thing about his first win that I'm happy for him with is that he did it by contributing. And I mean, obviously, the guy has had some pretty good games and he's had some times that we should have won, but 20 for 30, 200 plus yards and a touchdown. 100 passer rating, like none of that is anything to shake a stick at. Like those are pretty solid numbers overall. I guess my only critique would be, he's still throwing the ball behind guys, and it didn't really bite him too much today. But that is something that hopefully he improves on. The scouts will tell you it's one of the hardest things to change is the timing. But he's year two, hasn't even played a full 16 games, 17 games now with the changes in the season. But what do you think about his first win? Do you think it's something to write home about, or something to just say we won, let's get the next one?
I think it's a little bit of both. And look, I so far this season, I think Rattler has played well, given what he has had to deal with.
Hmm.
It's I've always kind of fallen back on the situation with Derek Carr. A lot of people didn't like Derek Carr and his play
Right.
style and all that because the team wasn't winning games under him. But in reality, it's not really the quarterback's fault. The quarterback isn't the team. You have other players, and whenever the Saints started, those injuries started piling up last season. Carr wasn't playing well. He ended up getting injured himself as well. So coming into this season, and Rattler before this game was 0-10 as a starter, and a lot of people are going to use that as a sort of way of saying, well, he's not that great of a quarterback. As a second year quarterback and his first year starting, I think he's done a great job. And today, 67% completion, over 200 yards passing, no turnovers. I think he had a great game today. Definitely one that will boost his momentum going into next Sunday, going up against the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. And towards the end of the game, they mentioned I can't even remember his name. He was out there just running around pretty much, and I even thought for one play he came back to the huddle for the Giants. By the way, Hyatt, he came back to the huddle, and they were breaking the huddle before he even got to the huddle. And at that point, as a wide receiver, you just run straight, right? And going to Rattler, it almost feels like, to that point, you get that first one. Hyatt has no receptions his rookie year, and with neighbors down, you think, maybe I get a chance now, and you're still not targeted until essentially garbage time and a loss. Like, so I'm glad that Spencer is finally out of that, right? Like he's not no he's no longer the winless quarterback after 10 games. And Hyatt on the other side over there, he'll get that catch eventually, but I'm just so happy to see Rattler get that win because I agree, for me, the main difference that I think some people are missing with Rattler versus Carr was the demeanor, right? Like a lot of people, years ago, uh, more than years ago, we're talking about three quarterbacks ago at this point, Aaron Brooks, he'd throw an interception and he'd be walking to the sideline smiling. That rubbed people the wrong way, and that's one thing that I think was kind of the difference maker between Carr's time here playing maybe a little bit below or around average quarterback play outside of the first 4 games of last year to compare to Rattler this season, you can tell he wants to, right? Like that's the big difference for me with Rattler and why I think fans are giving him more leash than we gave Carr because Carr was, almost taking the Tom Brady approach and throwing tablets and yelling at people, but Tom Brady won Super Bowls. You can do
Right.
that when you're Tom Brady. But Carr came into this team as a veteran, sure, but not a guy who's won. And that was the biggest thing for me with him. Like you can't just come yelling and talking nonsense about people in their positions when you're really not excelling at yours. And I don't think the only thing I've ever seen Rattler do is walk off the field. Like we don't see a lot of emotion from him, and I think he understands that he has to essentially earn the right to have those emotions, and or maybe he's just not an emotional guy. I don't know. I didn't watch him in college, so I can't really speak for that. But yeah, I mean, we could
Yeah.
spend the whole entire post game show talking about this too. But
Right. And no, look, I think it's great for a second year quarterback to be able to keep his composure like he has so far. I think he has a bright future, and he's proven it so far just as his demeanor, like you said.
right, yeah, and I mean, you saw, you know, today, obviously, we're talking, he technically Rattler was in a pro system and a pro locker room and ran plays against other NFL players last year, but um, there's a difference between I think the performance that maybe Dart had today. Last week he came in as this hot, fresh rookie that was having a fun time, and this week I think we saw rookie, right? Like I don't know if Rattler has ever had rookie, and I think that speaks to his composure. I'm not taking shots at Dart. He's again 2 games into the NFL at this point in his career, right? But I think you see that maturity in Rattler. To your point, the composure, So again, I'm happy. Ultimately, I think it's a weight off of his shoulders. I can imagine. And like I said, we can talk about this all we want. We could do an entire 30-minute segment on just his first win, but we'll move along here. My next question for fans and you is I almost want to taper the hype, right? This feels really good, but I've come into this season um, cautiously anxious, I guess, I don't even want to say like cautiously hopeful. And do you think that we'll see any, I guess, more jumps from this team? Or do you think this is a 1-4 Giants team who just made a quarterback change 2 weeks ago, who still has Russell Wilson on the bench, and maybe we should understand that before we get hype about this win?
Look, I think this is definitely a momentum changer right here. I thought they played really well last week at Buffalo, who arguably might be the best team in the NFL right now. I thought that game could have went either way up until the fourth quarter started, even though
Right.
I came into the game thinking we were going to get blown out just like we did against Seattle. Look, you're playing the Patriots next. You're playing the Bears next. Both teams are 1-4 right now. So you have an easy couple of games ahead of you, and this is definitely a momentum changer to help build this team's confidence up. I think, look, my position on the season isn't going to change. I do think it's a rebuild year, whether the team wants to
Right.
and say is so or not. But I think the schedule is in their favor for the rest of the season, other than pretty much the games in the NFC South, which always can go either way. So I'm not going to rule out anything just yet. I definitely do think that this game will help them take a huge momentum jump going into playing the Patriots in the Superdome on Sunday. So I'm not there just yet saying let's give up on the Saints. I think they're there to fight, and this game is definitely a momentum boost for them.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I said, I came into the season cautiously anxious, knowing that there's going to be these ups and downs. I still, I keep saying I think the Seattle game was the fluke, right? Like the start of this game was kind of making me think, oh, maybe it wasn't a fluke. Maybe that Seattle game was like who we are because this is the 1-4 Giants and they're
Right.
walking on us right now. But then I think this, kind of brings me to the next point that I wrote down. Resilient win is just you get the biggest thing about the Seattle game is I was concerned because we got smacked in the face and we never got back up again. But this game, those first couple of drives, it felt like, oh, this might be another one where, it's 14-3 in a hurry. And the Giants aren't very good. They have a rookie quarterback, you know, is this going to get out of hand quick? But the Saints turned around and I think showed their true colors this game, like we can fight back. Seattle was just a little bit too big of a hole for them to dig themselves out of. And going to the next point is, people kind of talked about it at the beginning of this game, and I think everyone's talked about it all season. Um, the D line, Chase Young is out. You let Kalen Saunders get traded for a lineman who I don't even think has seen many snaps. Maybe you're probably wrong on that, but it's I'm not saying Saunders was the difference maker, right? But you let guys go, you let Paulson Adebo go, Tyrann Mathieu retired. That's another thing that I want to highlight for this defense, who had a good game today. Yes, it's against the Giants. Yes, it's against a rookie quarterback. Yes, it's against a rookie running back and all these things. But I'd like to highlight that for him because you lose a lot of guys. You come into the season with two safeties who are now out. You come into the season with who you think you're starting, corners are going to be after losing Lattimore and Matthew, and now you come into the season thinking you have Reed and Blackman, and you lose both of them now, and then you're starting technically your starting corner, who a lot of people think should have been benched in week 2, is also out this game, and you're playing guys that have been on the team, like Plowden, and Kool-Aid, who last season he was here, and I even texted earlier in the game to someone, and I said, like, I almost refuse to believe it's a player thing, because these guys can't regress this much from one season to the next, and so, like, you start looking at Staley, but I always had a joke about Najee Marshall. We'll talk Pelicans for just a second here. That every time I talk bad about him, he'd play like the best game of his season, kind of thing. And I almost feel like that's what happened with the Saints secondary. I was trash talking them in text messages, just saying, like, what is going on? Like, these guys are out of place, and things like that. And the next thing you know, like, the secondary just seemed to figure something out. And a part of me thinks that the D line still needs help. That's no secret. I mean, your
Right.
best sack of the season in Granderson, which was the textbook tackle, the textbook sack. You couldn't have gotten flagged for that over the middle of the field for unnecessary roughness on a defensive player. I don't think, the way he tackled, and the back judge, who was right there, is the one who called it. He had the best view on it. So it's a little frustrating, but I digress. But I would love to see the D line maybe give some of these other guys a shot, because we have these backups in secondary now that are just looking like they've been playing the whole season and looking like they didn't miss a beat. So obviously Sanker is a stud, right? And now
Mhm.
you got Kool-Aid playing probably the best football of his career in the second half of that game. Obviously, the first half, he quite literally got hit in the face and didn't fight back until the second half of the game. But it's exciting to see. But what next step do you think the defense needs to take to just consistently do this week after week?
I think they just got to build off of the performance they had today, especially in the second half. Look, in the first half, like you said, I came in and look, I had a feeling we would win this game. Obviously, you never know, and
Right.
with the team and the way they've been playing, you really don't know. In general, the defense wasn't really playing well. I mean, Jackson Dart in that offense was moving the ball really, really well in the first half. I mean, Cam Scattaboo ran pretty well. I thought Jackson Dart, I mean, he ran pretty well, was throwing clean passes. That offense looked smooth. And in the second half, they just stepped up. Like you said, Sanker is a really great stud. And McKinstry, who coming into this game, I've had doubts on because this season he's not played the best I thought he could. And in the second half, he definitely stepped it up. So I think they just have to build off of the momentum that they had today. Like I said a few minutes earlier, um, it's really just a building process. You're working with a new defensive coordinator. You're working with a new scheme. And so definitely one of the big things that they'll have to work on is that defensive line. I mean, for a second, I was like, could this arguably be the best offensive line we're facing this season? Because they were protecting Jackson Dart, especially in the first half, really well. But maybe it's just the poor defensive line that we've had to deal with. So that's definitely something we got to improve on. But think the defense will be able to take this game and boost themselves going into the next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, I'm hopeful that the more comfortable Staley gets with his defense, the more comfortable he will with being wanting to blitz essentially. Because I mean that's the biggest thing is it feels like a lot of our blitz are just Pete Werner standing in the middle of the field and he runs right into the center who's not blocking anyone anyway. And then it's just 5-on-5. It's not like you have an advantage. But hopefully now that the secondary, obviously we don't want to, bail it all out on one game, but or one half really, but hopefully with kind of the emergence of some of these guys and being good positional players, we'll be able to see more of a Alontae Taylor blitz or even a Sanker blitz versus just blitzing maybe a linebacker, because we've played some young quarterbacks so far in the season and the NFC South outside of Baker is full of young quarterbacks right now. And so you're going to need to figure out how to blitz some of these guys because, if you can't get pressure with four, you got to send somebody. It's just like if you can't protect your quarterback with five, keep a tight end, keep a running back in, do something to help your guys. And right now, I think that was the another big part of the secondary was the fact that plenty of people said it on Twitter today and Instagram and Facebook that the you can't guard a guy for 9 seconds, and you never want a quarterback to go flat footed. But there was a couple of times today, like you were talking about, Jackson Dart was able to just kind of stand there like
Mm-hmm.
not really like on his tippy toes. He was able to just kind of like observe what was going on, which is crazy to see because that looks like, you have the number one team in college football playing a high school team. Like that's what that gives me,
Right.
like that was insane to see. And the D line just needs to figure out a way to get going because that's kind of atrocious, all things considered. But we still got the win, and there was enough pressure to still get the ball where the Saints could get the interception. But kind of open it up to a guest segment. Anything you want to talk about that we didn't bring up that you saw today, this week, or leading into the game?
Not really. I think we pretty much hit all the points. That running game today just didn't look really well for the
Yeah,
Saints. I thought it was pretty poor. Kamara wasn't able to get much on the ground. Kendre Miller wasn't either. It was just a poor offensive performance in terms of running the ball. So definitely something that we're going to have to build on. Other than that, look, I think going back to the first point, I don't want to sit here talking about Rattler all game, but I thought that pass that he threw to Rashid Shaheed was awesome. And it proves that he is capable of throwing passes that are beautiful like that. I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that. He was open. It was a great route, great throw, touchdown. Just an awesome play.
yeah, no, I agree because I mean I've been asking for it all season. Open up your playbook. You said, you know what, I want Spencer Rattler. I'm gonna let that rookie sit for a couple of games at least, maybe the season. But right now I'm going with Spencer. And then not to play to his strength, which I think is the deep ball, was kind of interesting, And I'm looking at the stats right now, talking about the rushing. We had an average of 2.9, but I want to kind of take away that 2.9, and it's probably closer to an average about 3.8 because Taysom had those runs late in the game where he was really just trying to run up the middle, and it was 4 or 5 runs, and he's 6 carries for -1 yard, and I want to back up just a second because I just said Taysom's Hill and I thought about it and we tweeted it. Props to him. Taysom Hill of the last 10 years would have thrown that bomb to the end zone and hoped for the best. But Taysom saw that there was another corner running with Spencer, which I don't know why you're covering Spencer in that play. He is younger and more athletic, so I guess maybe that's your logic. And then a safety in the middle. And Taysom put it where only Jawan could catch that ball, which was great to see because in years past, I think that would have just been an easy interception and not a great completion. So shout out to Taysom. He came in knowing that he's probably not ready for full contact like he's used to, but he came in and did what they asked him, and that was a great pass by him as well. 19
Definitely.
yards when, like I said, he would normally try to punt the ball down the field essentially. So but yeah, it's exciting to see. Jumping into the NFC South, Panthers beat the Miami Dolphins, so Panthers will move to 2-3, unfortunately. So the Panthers are essentially tied, for lack of better wording, with the Falcons, and then the Buccaneers play at 3. So we haven't seen that game, but just one thing, more thing of note before we hop off of here. I thought it was kind of funny that um, they showed, at least on the broadcast that I was watching, they showed Sean Payton going for two to
Hmm.
essentially win that game. And they were like, yeah, Saints fans know something about that aggressive Sean Payton and willing to take the risk. In the very next play, Moore went for it on 4th and 5 and got it. And I was like, that couldn't have been a better, like, a foreshadowing to the moment. It's almost like Moore knew what was going on in the broadcast. He was like, you know what, Saints fans do
Right.
deserve this. Let's do it. That was cool to see. I mean, it was completely unrelated, and I don't, it wasn't intentional, but it was just funny how it worked out. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, like I said, the Falcons are on a bye, so we don't have a whole lot to talk about, and the Buccaneers didn't play for the NFC South. I said Taysom Hill and Scatadoo, whatever his name is. We're going to. Speaking of him, I don't know if he's got a long time in the league, because that dude, he's not afraid to put his head into every single play, and that scares
Hmm.
me for him
Right.
because there was a couple of plays I even texted somebody. I was like, "Do you think he'll ever get a flag? Because you can get a flag for leading with the helmet on offense, right? Like we've seen it before." I won't talk too much about that, but I just thought that was interesting. I haven't watched him a whole bunch, but I feel like he's gonna struggle in this league if he keeps doing that. There's a lot of big guys in this league, but yeah, we'll sign off. Make sure you check us out everywhere at Be in the Know. Pretty much if you can find us on socials, that's going to be the tag. If it's not that, it's just the Know. So Facebook, for instance, is just the Know. And yeah, we'll be here pre and post game every week. Like I said, unless something happens, something crazy goes on, win, lose, or draw, we could wind up 0-16 for the season. We'll still be doing this. So appreciate you guys stopping by. I'll pass it over to you so you can shout out what you guys do over there as well. So
Yeah. No, we're looking forward to next week, and yeah, I'll definitely try to be on this show more often to talk Saints. I feel like I don't talk Saints much, so definitely have to hop on a little bit more now that we finally have a win in our books. But like you
yeah,
said, win, loss, draw, we're gonna be here. You're gonna be here. Somebody's gonna be here talking New Orleans Saints, and that's what matters the most.
yeah, absolutely. You want to tell folks where to find you guys on socials?
Yeah, of course. Cajun Sports Talk. We have our weekly podcast on YouTube Tuesdays at 1:30. Of course, we are on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok at Cajun Sports Talk. Find us over there. We got a lot of sports talk about Louisiana Raging Cajuns. We talk about the LSU Tigers. We talk about everybody within Cajun country as well as the New Orleans Saints and beyond.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thank you.